welcome to the Car Sim and Race Driver Show, presented by Hugh Hattrick. Here at Bathurst in the Forest, my very special guest, Basic Ollie, Rascal, Rabbit, Josh Martin. It's great to have you back on the show. Drive fast and try not to crash.
Hello and good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Car Sim and Race Driver Show. And today we have a very, very special guest. It is Callum McIntyre. Good evening, Callum.
Evening, Hugh. Thank you so much for having me on. It's great to be here. Looking forward to it. Yeah.
Oh, it's fantastic to have you here as a guest. And of course, you've got lots of people might not know your contributions of what you do with sim racing. So we've got some very exciting announcements about what you do. So I'll get straight into it and get these questions going. And of course, everybody in the chat, remember, you can ask questions and you can put them in capitals, and we can get things going. If you put it in capitals, it's easier for me to read the comments, so I can make sure that we get the questions for Callum. But the first question, as we always do for our wonderful guests here, is how did you get started in sim racing?
Thank you, Hugh. Yeah. So I started. It was a while ago in GT Sport when I was at university. I did engineering at university. Always been into motorsport and particularly the design and stuff that goes into it. So I got GT Sport because it was the most accessible thing, and I think we'd all seen Super GT videos and things like that. And played at a very low level. I wasn't very good, and I found that really frustrating. And didn't really know where to go with that. I took a bit of a break while I was going through finals and things like that, exams and stuff. And then after uni, it's when COVID hit mid-March time. And lots of the engineering jobs were getting really tough to get into because a lot of them were being taken down and things like that. And I applied for a scriptwriter role at Driver 61. And I got that and started writing. And as part of that, I was in the office a lot with Scott. And Scott would have iRacing on. And so we'd play a lot at lunchtimes, race each other. I would always lose. And it kind of escalated from there. And now sometimes I don't lose. So it's really good. Essentially, I got hooked on iRacing, and that changed the game for me. It was racing with other people, making friends with people you'd never met, racing as part of endurance teams in 24-hour races, 12-hour races, whatever. That has meant that it upped the enjoyment level for me, and I kind of pushed really hard and started to gain some experience. And you gain some nous as you learn to drive and not get punted by people and learn some racecraft and that sort of thing. So it's kind of that, as well as listening to Scott's coaching. He's a very honest bloke. So whenever I was making rookie mistakes in the sim, I would hear about it straight away. So that meant I learned very quickly. Yeah.
Because we watched some of Scott's videos, and I think was he driving a Caterham, or maybe it was a Mazda, and it seemed incredibly, he has some great video of onboard shots of this, how lively these cars are when they race around tracks like Brands Hatch, and I suppose he's done it for real, so it's great to have somebody like that can then teach you exactly what you need to know.
And for me, before that, I'd played mainly Gran Turismo Sport, but then I played with Assetto Corsa, and obviously the physics are different. Everything feels different. The way you deal with the weight of the car, all of that stuff was different. And then I tried ACC, and that again was different. And so to me, it felt like I felt like I was learning to play a game. Whereas with iRacing, having Scott say, this is actually really what it feels like, bar G-forces, like the physics of the tire, all of that nerdy stuff. He's like, the car actually feels like this. And so having someone say that and then go, okay, I can drive this one quicker, it is in the back of your mind, like, okay, this might be useful one day. I think we all want to drive on tracks at some point. That's why we're here, isn't it? And so learning skills that are transferable, that again changed it, because I was like, oh, hang on, I can really focus here, learn from a pro racing driver, and those skills might be useful one day. That was really, really cool.
That's an interesting thing you say about that, because not everybody kind of gives that that kind of confirmation of they would really like to race in real life. Or you want to transfer your skills. And I think for a lot of us, the sim racing has been a huge breakthrough, because it's allowed us to not only have fun, but to learn quite a bit through the racing and the games. And then when you go to a race day or a track day, it's amazing how much easier it feels. It just feels a bit more natural when you get on track. And so you sort of think, well, actually, this is worth it. It's beginning to start to pay. It's start to make things, you see yourself improve quite quickly, which is good.
I know. I went karting not long ago at Daytona. They've got like D-Max karts, so they're really quick, but they brake all at the rear axle, and so that straight away I was like, oh, it feels like an LMP2 in iRacing. I was like, okay, I'll drive it like that, and I took that driving style, and I was like, oh, hang on, this is actually working. It was really strange, but the only thing I didn't know was who was where on the track, and I didn't have a delta. I found that really tough. I'm used to staring at a delta when I'm driving. And it was amazing how I used so much of the sim racing that, okay, I'm overtaking a back marker. This is how I do that. I was doing all of that, but in a karting scene. And so that's really fun. But yes, sim racing definitely has other benefits that motorsport doesn't, with it being cheaper and talking to your friends and all that sort of stuff. But I think we all secretly want to drive on a track at one day,
Absolutely. Oh, it's fantastic. Well, the chat is building up with lots of questions. So I'll quickly start with one or two that we've got so far. Now, Paul Stanford, a big shout out to Paul. He's got a fantastic kind of entertainment shop down in the Midlands. He'll correct me if I'm wrong, but you can give the details in the chat there. But his first question is, what's your favourite track to race?
What's my favourite track? I have a couple of different answers. Really favorite track, if I were to have to pick one, it would probably be Imola. I've had some really good results at Imola, and it's really flowing. There's loads of history. I would pick it over a lot of the Grand Prix tracks, I think. But I also I have a soft spot for the Roval in iRacing. If you haven't played iRacing, you probably have never seen it, but it's like a it's an oval circuit with a road element in the middle, and it's got camber, it's got walls, it's got like bankings, it's got tight chicanes. Like, it's a real challenge. You have to be switched on, and I enjoy that. So I have to say, Imola, I mean, and obviously I was a big Senna fan, so watching that day back in 1994, it has a huge kind of historical kind of impact of it. But do you like its current configuration, or would you prefer the old Tamburello corner? To be honest, I've never raced the old corner. All the games I've played have had the current version. I need to find it. It's not on iRacing. I don't think it's on Gran Turismo, is it?
No,
I don't think any games have the old version.
I think you can get some of the mods, I think, on Assetto Corsa. I think possibly there. But obviously, it's been a long time since they did it. It was 1995, I think, wasn't it, when they did it, when they changed it all. But it's quite a thing. And I mean, I know people who have gone there, and they said it's just an incredible history. As you walk around the track, you kind of feel it come alive when you walk around these places. I think it's like Monza as well. Monza has that kind of feel to it.
Yes, but, I went to Spa not long ago, and it was like that too. Stood at the bottom of Eau Rouge, like looking up at it. It was like, wow, yeah. No, that's fantastic. But now your brother Ewan is here with us, I believe, and he's surprised. He's saying, not the Montreal track. And he says, get out of here. But I like that too. Ewan's favourite race of all time was Jenson Button 2011. I think it's one of my favourite Grand Prix ever, and I think that's why he likes it so much.
No, that's fantastic. Now, just to let everyone know in the chat, we will get to the Driver 61 questions. I know Lippy asked a question at the very start, so we will get to those questions in a few minutes' time. But it's great to get Grand Prix history and Grand Prix chat and all of this coming out as well, which is fantastic. Now, a chap with a very good YouTube name called the Dude Abides says, okay, so what's the best car you have driven in iRacing against the best car in IRL? I'll put it up.
Okay, the best car in IRL is, oh wow, you can pull. That's very clever. The best car in IRL isn't very good, actually. I'm trying to think what's the best car I've driven. We got invited to a supercar experience day, and I got to drive an R8 V10, and that was cool. Yeah. But if I could have my pick, I'd love to drive a Caterham at some point. I think they're really, really raw, really cool cars. I think that'd be next on my list. In the sim, I'm probably going to be really boring and say the LMP2 in iRacing. It's so fluid and balanced, but it's also got that it will bite you if you get it wrong. And I find that's the right combination of when you're on it, it feels like everything's flowing, everything's like, you're smashing it, whereas it will bite you, so you've got to be really attentive. And I've done a few 24-hour races in that, and you get to love the cars you've done long races with. You've driven a lot of laps. So I remember the first one I did was at Daytona, and I did about 7 hours of driving. That's when I first got iRacing. And it was in the LMP2, and so it was the first car I really understood.
It's quite. I have to say, from my literally a week and a half of iRacing, I think the noise is very good, and even the graphics are pretty decent. To be fair, I quite enjoy it, and the experience, because you really have to concentrate. There's not some. I like the fact that there's a lot of basic settings, so you know that you're not at a disadvantage in terms of setting up the car to other drivers, which is quite nice. You can just go out there and try and do a good time, and then do the race. So I like that. I mean, I've done a few of the cars so far. But it's been really entertaining. And I've got some questions for you about that specifically that I'll ask a bit later on. But we will go to the questions here. Here we go. Now, also, Richie has said, well, this will be on a podcast. It will come out early next week. We will get that out, so you'll be able to get it, and you can play it in your car again and again to get all the tips that Callum, I'm sure, will give us a wee bit later on. Now, here we are. Here we go. Now, your brother has said the 2011 Canada race has to be the best race of all time. I might be biased, but I do love Jenson Button. That is true. That he's a good chap, and now he's on Sky TV half the time, giving lots of interviews and things. So here we are. Now, the Dude Abides is. Oh no, sorry. It was saying you don't like settings. I don't. So yes, I don't like setting up cars. Only because I don't have the time to get all the. I need to buy the setups. I think that would be probably an easier way if there's a way of doing that. How do you find with a more complicated series setting up a car on iRacing? Is it quite straightforward?
That's the next thing on my list. I think to improve from where I am now. I think the next thing needs to be playing with the car and making a setup for myself. But currently, I'm using VRS. You can pay for like one of these services, and they make setups for you. But they tend to be, some of them are more tuned towards the really great drivers who can control a thing that's an absolute weapon and wants to kill you. Yeah. And some of them are slower and a little softer. And so I've gone somewhere in the middle with what I pick. But you kind of need to learn. You need to learn who makes what type of setup, and that's kind of another one of those barriers with iRacing. There are lots of fixed races, which is brilliant, but on the setup side of things, it does separate the really great drivers who understand it like a race car driver would, and those who don't. And some people see that as a good or a bad thing. I'm starting to see that more and more as a good thing, because if you can get good at that, then you do have an advantage, and quite rightly so, because you've learned to set up a car well. And that's what would happen in real life. So I'm starting to jump over the fence on my decision on that. But
I think that's it. Once you've had enough experience of racing in iRacing, and then you're ready to go and take it to the next level. And it is good. But I think it's wonderful that if you just want to do the fixed ones, you've got a decent variety of races to do, and you can.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt there. What was really interesting is I've been with Scott a couple of racetracks, and he'll hop out after 5 laps, go, this needs changing, this needs changing, this needs changing. And that I was like, whoa, how can you know that? And then we did a few laps in a Caterham 620R, absolutely rapid Caterham. And I was in the passenger seat. And after a few laps, he got out and he said, I think it's too soft at the rear, needs tighter anti-roll bar, et cetera, et cetera. And I was like, I actually did pick up on those things. You start to sort of learn it and feel the car a little bit. But it's mega what they can pull out from just the feeling in the car and how they change it. And I need to learn to do that in the sim, definitely.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. I must imagine it must have been quite either phenomenal fun or quite terrifying racing around in a Caterham, at the same time. Because I mean, when I've seen Scott's videos, he absolutely flies, and those cars are really skittish as well, aren't they? So you're going to feel everything, every bump, and every bit as you go around a corner, and a whole lot. So it would be fantastic. Now, of course, we have got your YouTube channel in the description. So for everyone watching or listening, if you've not already subscribed to Callum's channel, then please do so. It's there in the description. And if you haven't already subscribed to our channel up here, it would be great to have you along in our community. Plus, we've got our Discord as well. And Callum, do you have a Discord?
I don't. No, I'm very active on lots of the others, so Kirith's and Ollie's and those sorts of places. So yeah, I'm contributing to other people's at the moment.
That's fine. So people can get in touch with you if they want to race with you or ask any other questions. Sometimes that happens. You might get somebody coming along and saying, I can race with you or something like that. Now we'll go to Lippy Racing's question from a wee while ago. I said, what's it like working for Driver 61, and what kind of effect has that had on your sim racing?
So the first question then, what's it like working? It's brilliant fun. It's intense. We work very hard. Scott is he thinks very fast. I have to work hard to keep up with him, and it's means it's intense, but it's good fun. We're growing the channel. That's been a real learning process, and starting this new channel, obviously, which is Driven Media. If you haven't seen it, it's like automotive content, and that's moving from Driver 61, which is all shot in a studio, to out and about driving cars on a racetrack, and doing things like that. So that's been a real learning process, but it's been really good fun. It's nice and flexible. I work mostly remotely. My sim is right there, and so whenever we have a spare 20 minutes, we're racing on the sim, and so that's really good fun. And we've got a really good little team now. So we've got editors and writers and all sorts as part of the team. So it's really exciting, and we've got lots of things in the pipe work that we're working on all the time. Today I broke down this is loads of graphs and things, but every fastest lap from every Grand Prix in history, and then we're pulling some cool information out of that. So for me as a Formula One nerd, this is the coolest thing I could apply myself to. So there's a video coming out on that next week. Yeah.
Oh, that sounds really good, actually. I loved the video that Scott did on Senna and his technique for braking and why he was so good. And it was because he was spectacular to watch. And also the qualifying laps that he did, they were insane. And there's that famous one, I think, is it in Portugal, or he's qualifying and he's just going flat out, and then he has to overtake a back marker who's right in the way. And he just manages to kind of go around him and keep going, and it doesn't even affect his lap time. But it's like the car's right across almost on the driving line, and he just keeps going past it. And of course those legendary laps at Monaco that were just insane. How just he was on it was something like 1.5 seconds quicker than Prost around Monaco or something. I mean, you wonder how
Prost is no slouch,
I mean, it kind of incredible. But then, of course, that brilliant race with Senna and Mansell in '92 when they were split by next to nothing for the last few laps of that race. I remember Murray Walker went crazy as he was trying to commentate on that one. But let's get back to the questions. Here we are. Now, the Dude Abides has said, how technical can settings on iRacing get? And does it go as far as wheel balancing and shock setups?
Wheel balancing, no. I think but a lot of the tire pressure stuff it kind of takes over from that. Tire pressures are really, really important. Shock settings, yes, you can play with all of that. You can go as far as you like. I know lots of people who tune their wheelbase and tune their pedals and do all of that sort of stuff to get the absolute maximum out of it. To be honest, I've always found my strength isn't in flat out pace, is in the consistency stuff. And I've found all of those things kind of just add to what you're thinking about when you're racing. And I find stripping those back helps me on the long run. And that's kind of what I enjoy is the endurance races. And those really, really aren't about fastest laps. You know, because one slip up and you're 10 minutes and the whole lot is down the pan. So it's more about the long run stuff. And so I stay away from really fine tuning. I will always go on the safer side of where setups need to be slightly. You don't want to go too far and it's really slow.
Now we've got a great comment as well saying, Callum, are you working on a catchphrase for merchandise purposes? He says he's just planning ahead for the Jimmy Broadbent levels of the channel that he's hoping to see.
We haven't. No, I think those things need to come naturally, don't they? And they did for Jimmy. I imagine if he tried to sit down and think about it, I don't know, maybe he can, but you couldn't think of a catchphrase as good as "Please no punterino" or whatever. You know, he also has a really strong like creed, like motto. You know, like the cars aren't real, but the racing is. That's like a really strong brand, and I think that's really cool. But those things have to arrive naturally, and maybe, you know, we haven't jumped over that yet. Yeah,
we got ours for our channel is, of course, drive fast and try not to crash. Yes, it was kind of a phrase. You know, it was a phrase from Michael Schumacher originally, but we slightly adjusted it because he was asked, I think, at the beginning of '97 or '98, whatever it was, you know, what's his motto for the year? What's his kind of his thing? And he says, "Drive fast, don't crash." You know, and that was it. So you know, so that was the one. So I just altered it a bit, but yeah, it kind of suits our lot in sim racing as well. That although if you're in GT Sport, trying not to crash or being taken out is quite difficult sometimes.
Sometimes not in your hands, is it?
Yeah, exactly. That so yeah. Now we've got a question here from Richie. He's saying, if money was no object, what kind of car would you drive?
I was talking about this. I was streaming just before this. Actually, we did some fun races on iRacing, and we were talking about this because there's a new Porsche in the game, and I absolutely love all Porsches. Apart from the SUVs, I have a hatred of SUVs. But anyway, I was chatting to Scott about this. We have some really cool cars on the Driven Media channel, and he's like, "Would you want one of these? You know, would you pay this if you had this money?" And if someone gave me £1 million to buy a car, and I didn't get the change from it, I would still buy a 992, so the current version 911 Turbo, Turbo S maybe. But the new 911s to me look really, really cool. And they are verging on hypercar fast with a lot of those, you know, with a lot of the new supercars. So I think that for me is all the car you could ever want. Yeah,
I think they look really cool at the back, don't they, with the new lights? They do. It's they have certainly. I've not been a Porsche fan, to be honest, that much, but with the new one, I have to say they've gotten a lot more. I liked, what was the one of the Cayman. I do quite like the Cayman. And they did a GT version of that, didn't they? A kind of, or I think a sport version of that, and I thought that's quite nice because it's quite well priced. Around about at the time it was about 50,000 or 55,000 or something. And I thought actually, and there were some amazing pre-reg cars available with huge amounts of money off, which is rare for a supercar like that or something, you know, a decent sports car. But I like the look of it. I love the back of it. Reminds me of a Grand Prix car or a racing car. And the way
we have one of those on the Driven Media channel. It was like a red 718 Cayman, and that was really cool. It was really, really cool.
Yeah. One of my favorite cars, I think the car I would love to have a go in if I can. I don't think you can buy them, but it's the Ferrari Enzo Fxx. And we actually thought it was a Formula One car because we were at Goodwood one year and we heard this incredible noise, and I thought, oh, maybe it's like a 1996 Ferrari V12 or 95 car when they had the V12s, because the sound was so incredible. And we ran to the start finish, and by the time we got there, we could just see over the bales, and it was the FXX Enzo hearing along the road, and it did a huge burnout at the start, and it was just the sound of that to me is the most incredible.
They made like 25 of them, didn't they? And
and they do race them all, or they do track days and normally different Italian circuits. You can watch them on YouTube as they do these incredible. But the noise was just incredible. And like those F1 cars, the Ferraris from '93 and '94, it was almost like it kind of sang as it was. It did about 18,000 RPM in this incredible kind of way. I do miss those engines. What do you think in terms of like the V8s, the new V6 hybrids versus the old V8s? Are you a bit of a fan of the new ones, or what do you prefer?
So I've been watching F1 for a long time now, but sort of in and out. And so I never really saw the stark change to them. I don't see. I like to not moan about these things. I enjoy racing really, and the cars. And I think actually the engineering that goes into these new ones is as impressive, if not more, than the high revving V8s, V10s.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of slightly over the noise because they're more of a thing. You know, you're in awe of them, aren't you? They're amazing. But I've been with Scott a couple of times when he's driven V10 Formula One cars, and they are another level. The way they sound is incredible, and also the way they're much lighter and narrower, and they move around a lot. So I've seen lots of onboards, and you know, you're all over the place. You're all over the place with it. Whereas current F1 is sort of turn in, unwind the steering wheel, turn in, exactly. Whereas they're all over the place in the old ones, and that's really cool to see.
Yeah. Because that's right, because they had Alonso's car in Dubai last year, wasn't it? At Abu Dhabi, and everybody stopped, even Lewis Hamilton when he was getting interviewed when the car went past, wasn't it? And it was fantastic. But I think the noise makes quite a bit. But to be fair, the new cars are a bit noisier than they were, and I think, as you say, that they look incredible. And they are just so fast, and they can be driven in exceptional circumstances, even at Spa. It was quite a thing, but the fact they could get round a track that was flooded to anything is incredible.
I've seen Spa when it's like that. Scott went for a Revolution race, and it got red flagged. Actually, I think Scott didn't pit; he stayed out on slicks and trundled behind the safety car. Couldn't keep up with it at times, and everyone else pitted, so he won the race. But down Eau Rouge, you get a river, like down the pit lane that's there. You know, there's water flooding down. It pools at the bottom. There's a couple of drainage points there, but if they're not on it, then you get lots of water. And when it rains there, it really, really rains. So it was amazing to see those qualifying laps, you know, another level.
Oh, absolutely. Now, here's a good question from Richie. As an F1 fan, what's your best older driver and also your current favourite from the current generation?
Older driver. Kimi Räikkönen. I've watched lots of historic races of him in McLaren and things like that. And I just like his approach. You know, he's there for the racing and nothing else. And that's really cool. Current, I'm going to sound like a hype, on the hype train now, but George Russell, I've liked him for a long time. I think he's a really cool guy, and he's done F1 right. Lando has too. But I just like George. I think he's cool, and he's been fighting for a team down the back, and I think it's right where he is now. Yeah, I saw a really good interview with him yesterday, and he was almost in tears when he was saying just how much finishing second meant to him when he was in this interview, because it's 3.5 years of very hard work at Williams, and you could really tell that he meant it, because he's obviously been through a really hard time, and he's outperformed the car by a long way on many occasions. And I think that shows the sign of a really good driver when they're able to really level up and get the car to do things that they weren't anywhere near expecting. But I think it shows he's 100% into the job, and he's obviously won previous categories as well. So it was great to see him get up there. I think it's going to be brilliant that he's Lewis's teammate next year. I think he's really going to push Lewis a lot, and it was so unfortunate that he didn't win when he had that chance last year. Because he was so close that everything went wrong that could have gone wrong. None of it really being his fault. I mean, he schooled Bottas, didn't he? Like, he was quicker in every level. Well, he wasn't in quali, but that's kind of understandable. That's the fine margins. But long stint pace, he was quicker, and then he overtook him the way he did. And you could see there was something right there. Yeah.
It's great for Britain too that we keep producing good racing drivers. It keeps the British fans happy, and the Silverstone crowds full to the brim, isn't it? When you go and watch a Grand Prix from there. But there we go. Now, what's been quite funny is that Jerry NCF1 has said it's scary that Callum says that Kimi is historic, because Jerry must be a little bit older, just like the
apologies.
And the Dudabider says Graham Hill was an epic legend. And Lando Norris is my prediction for 2023 world champion. I think it's going to be interesting if McLaren can get faster. They're still a wee bit away though at the moment, I think, but they might potentially get a bit faster.
I know he's quick on iRacing. So
yes, that's true. Yeah, I do like him. I do. I think he's a lot of fun, which is good. Now we've got a question here. If you could race any era, what would you choose? For example, comparing 1970s Monaco to modern, which is more exciting?
Any era of Formula One, or any era of racing. Like, if I could pick any era of racing, it would be the 917 era at Le Mans. I think that's mental. Those guys were mental. Formula One, probably somewhere in the 90s. I know those cars are just awesome. Yeah. I'm not sure where. Probably if I could plot myself in Schumacher's Benetton, around there, I think that would be really cool. But so would racing now. Those machines are mental. But yeah.
The one Grand Prix I've seen live was Senna winning at Donington in 1993.
Really? You picked a good one.
Oh, I was 18, my 18th birthday, just a few weeks before it, and it was just the most incredible experience because it was wet and dry and all the build up. Just absolutely phenomenal. And I remember because the cars went through, and even on the warm up lap, you had your hands to your ears. It was that loud, because we were quite close to the kind of Donington loop at the back. And then when they got into the grid, you just heard the revs rise, and then it just dropped because at that point it was just red and green, and off they went. And just astonishing how it all worked. And I mean, they ran out of tires. I think Prost had to go back in and take on a set of old tires that he had worn before because
really,
it was incredible the amount of stuff they did. And at that time as well, they came into the pits at full speed, so it was madness as they used to take off. And there's still people doing pit stops, and Senna's herring on out of the pits at 100 miles an hour right past them. But it was an incredible experience. We saw Schumacher go right in front of us into the sand trap. And we saw Senna emerge on the first lap ahead of Prost coming out of the second last hairpin, kind of coming up over the hill before they go into the last corner. And I mean, he was second by the time he went past us. And when he was at the first corner, he was seventh. And we heard all this, on the radio as they go around, and you just think, my goodness, what's happened? And he just drove away. But at that time as well, you had traction control, and you could see them every time they changed gear. The move, it would go like that. You'd feel that you could see everything that was going on, and it was just the most astonishing performance. But yeah, that was the one. Have you been to a few Grand Prix?
I haven't. No, I've been to not actually that much racing. When we were at Spa, we saw WEC, the 6 hours of Spa 2020, and that was really cool. Again, those Porsches were mental. They sounded insane. Yeah, and the Toyotas as well, the way they were just like shoom, and they were really quiet and absolutely flying by. But no, I haven't been to see Formula One yet. I need to at some point. And I definitely want to go see Le Mans and Nürburgring 24 next year. That's on my list for next year. Is driving up to go and see those. But yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's great. Now here's a good question for you. From the Dude Abides. It says, am I the only one when doing a sim race that you have an internal monologue of Murray Walker? And
I'm sure you're not.
Yeah, that's all. I always like that one in Japan when you finish a race at Suzuka, and I always jokingly say, I've got to stop because I got a lump in my throat, and that was it, because that's when Hill took his championship. But no, it's great. So keep the questions coming in for Callum. But now I'm going to ask you the thing that I always do for you fast drivers out there. What are the big tips that you can give us for driving faster?
Okay, it depends where you're at, but I think focus on braking first. So the thing that I learned was going from Gran Turismo Sport, which is sort of very flat out, stop as hard as you can, turn in the corner, do the same again. It's a lot about understanding how the platform of the car is. So weight transfer. And if you can get that right, you have a faster car. So if your car isn't always up on the nose when you're braking, if you're turning, you're not, manipulating the weight differently, then the car will be easier, the car will be faster. And it's where people say, when you look at someone really, really good, they're really smooth, it looks effortless. That's what they're doing. They're manipulating the weight of the car so that the car is actually faster than yours. And the way to do that is to think about braking first. So if you can watch, there's loads of Driver 61 videos on trail braking, but understanding that braking isn't just to slow down, it's to balance the car on the way into the corner. And that's where you get all of your pace. So if you can come off the brakes really lightly, feel that slight slip. If you can feel like a very slight oversteer, just a tiny, tiny bit. I remember I was in the sim with Scott, and the first time we did that, he's like, right, that feeling. Remember that, because that's what it feels like to be fast. And try and do that every corner. So manipulate the weight on the way into the corner. Get the car settled. Remember, there's probably more grip than you think there is. And then that will get you a long way up in lap times. I know that gained me seconds in Gran Turismo Sport, understanding that principle. And then the same again in iRacing.
Because I think it's so easy to brake very late in GT Sport, and then probably in most games, because some corners kind of draw you in. And then you suddenly realize, I've gone way too wide and I missed the apex, or the car's kind of struggling to accelerate out. So I suppose when you get your braking ups right and the car turns in a bit better, then you can be on the power earlier and get a good run out of the corner.
One thing I would say as well is that a lot of, if you can, if you're in the early stages, not very much experience, I would encourage you to turn off the racing lines and the cones in Gran Turismo and all of those. I know lots of people use them, but I find that gets you very channeled to one line, to one braking point, to not fully understanding what the car is doing. So if you can learn to drive a track, take 5 laps before you get in any race. Like that's kind of a golden rule for me, is like at least 5 laps before I enter any race. And that means you've got enough time to pick up the braking points, understand the flow, feel the different lines. And I feel you don't get that when you've got the racing line on. So that's one thing I would say, take the crutch away, do loads and loads of practice, and you will come out on top. And it means that if you do learn a new track, you learn it so much quicker, and you can get up to pace so much quicker, because you're not thinking about, I brake at this point where it goes red. You're understanding what the car can do and how to apply that to a different track. Now
that's really good, and it is, because there's so many things to try and learn, and your steering input and braking, and then accelerating out. So it's great to know your tips to help people getting faster. In fact, I have to say that the first time I did a race on iRacing, I think it was at the Oran South Circuit or something, Mount Oran.
Oran Park. Wow.
Oran Park, that's what it was. And I had no idea. Track. I had no idea what I was doing, and it was in the afternoon, and I drove out, and I couldn't even see how to get out of the pit lane because there were so many cones in the little Mazda MX-5. And so I drove straight on thinking, it looks like it's going straight. And ended up on some other part of the circuit with a dead end. Then I got told I was black flagged because I made a dangerous exit out of the pits. And I didn't even know where I was because I'd never been around the circuit before. And I looked and think, where on earth is the pits? And how do you get out? Then I came out of the pit lane and I turned sharp left. And then I got a black flag for that because that wasn't the right way. And eventually I saw somebody else going over, and they went halfway along and they turned. But it was so kind of crazy. So now the only aid I have is the pit lane exit. So at least I can find out how to get out the pits so I can just get on the track, because sometimes there's not a lot of kind of guidance. In real life, you'd expect a few arrows here and there or a sign saying that way, It was. So what's been your biggest ever kind of like new mistake from a beginner's mistake on iRacing?
There's been several times I've got in cars and I can't string 2 corners together without spinning. Those are probably the ones that happens a lot when you jump in a new car as a beginner. And like, particularly you were saying earlier, but before we went live, about the Indy car, that thing is an absolute weapon. And trying to control that is so much power. And on cold tires, it has 0 grip, less than a road car. Like you controlling something that's got 700 horsepower with no grip. So there's been lots of those moments. That Dallara kind of racing car was quite strange, because when you got up to like 4th, 5th, and 6th, it almost seemed like the gear ratios were identical, because it didn't seem to. They hardly give you that. You were probably on an oval setup, so 5th and 6th in an oval. 6th is for quali when the engine's turned up, and when you're in the slip. and fifth is like 800 revs different. It's not very much, and that's where you get max power when you're on your own. That was most likely why. But it's all these little things you've got to learn with iRacing. You know, they don't help you very much.
Yeah, they give you nothing at all.
Yeah.
No, it was hilarious. Eventually, I got it. I thought, how on earth do I do it? So I actually made it through qualifying and was able to get actually out onto the circuit and do a few laps. But no, there's some. It's absolutely great fun. And Loopy Racing has said that Oran Park is his local track in iRacing.
Australia.
Yeah. And
it's a car park now. It's not there anymore. They got rid of it.
Did they?
Oh, yeah, real shame because it's a cool track. It's really cool.
Yeah, because I wasn't sure. I mean, because I'm so new to iRacing, do they have tracks that are kind of made up, or is it all tracks that are kind of real? So it's
they're all real. Laser scanned real tracks.
Yeah, that's pretty good going. That now we've also got a question here, another good one about immersion rigs. Here we are from the Dude Abides. I'll put this one up here. I've seen a hydraulic mounted sim setup recently at a friend's place. It's going a bit far in my view, but would you guys ever want to go for that immersion level?
I was very lucky to go on a sim at Cranfield University, Cranfield Simulation they're called. And that is, if you imagine you plucked the safety cell out of a Formula One car and mounted that on your and hydraulic rigs. They've also got some mad stuff where the seat around you and the belts and things like that all have inflatable bags in.
All right.
And then a full 180-degree thing. And that was absolutely ridiculous because you were driving through Spa. And obviously, I got in the car. It was in Assetto Corsa was the sim they were using, but with this mad rig, and turned it into Eau Rouge. And the whole thing that like the seat moved inside the tub, it squeezes you, pushes you like you're under G, and it was another level. I know they're about 180 grand to buy, but that was awesome for me. Like if you're going for raw pace, I think those levels of immersion, I find personally VR slows me down, and I think hydraulic motion sim would do the same. So static sim, single screen, and that's kind of where I think it's at for normal sim racing. And that means, you know, if you've got a TV and a cheap wheel, you're at the same level. And I think that's really cool. Yeah,
because I know that Race Room, they've launched a motion rig. I can't remember how much. It was about £5,000 or £6,000, or maybe something a wee bit more. But for the whole thing, it was actually pretty decent for what you get. But I think I have played. I played on a VR rig quite recently. But as good fun as it was using Project Cars 2 as the actual set of the game, and I was racing at Knockhill in a Formula Ford, and it was great fun. But I'm not sure if it was as good as it's made up to be. You know, I think I quite like just having a standard setup and then just playing with that.
I'd agree with you there, I think.
Yeah. And some people sometimes feel a bit sick as well after they've done it. I've not, but I think it's because it's you're adjusting to the two different things, and your body's not moving when you're seeing the car moving. So it's kind of because it's all around you. But it's interesting to see where they'll take it. But so far, I don't think it's been the big hit that they thought it might be.
Yeah, that's fair enough, I think. Yeah.
Now, here we are. I think we are back on rigs. And it says, the Dude Abides, I just paid £500 for my Mini. It's going to cost a few quid to put it back into good condition, but the price was right. So you must be buying all little cars to maybe potentially perhaps to race or to put it on the road. Or was that a rig? It's we'll have to
imagine
see.
You could have a mini rig. You could have it like in the garage or something, and like retrofit or like the wheel and the pedals. I've seen a guy on TikTok. He's got that. He's got I think it's basically the interior of a Ford Focus, and he's mounted like a Thrustmaster wheel in there with the Focus wheel on it.
Wow.
He's gone a long way, and that looks pretty cool.
Yeah, it's amazing what people are creating now, and the kind of tech that you can get, which is amazing. Now there's a question here for you: what's the worst racing game, and also the oldest game, and where you started?
I started on Gran Turismo Sport, which isn't a bad game. You could argue it's old, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not. The worst racing game. The oldest game is probably Need for Speed Underground 2, which is like free roam. You mod out a Corsa or something and drive it around, and that was lots of fun. Worst racing game. I really dislike Mario Kart. I know I'm very that's an unpopular opinion, but I really dislike that. So I'd probably say Mario Kart.
I agree with you. I played it. My kids have got a Wii, old Nintendo Wii, and they rave about Mario Kart. And I tried to play it, and I was hopeless. But I think when you like proper racing games, it needs to be a proper racing game and not something in between.
When you're winning, you've got a 40-second gap, and a flipping blue shell comes along. You're like, what? They don't have this in Formula One.
Yeah. Oh, there's nothing worse if you're ahead, and then they have that setting on GT Sport where it catches up, so you can never actually get ahead, and they're always catching you very easily, which is a bit of a pain. But I think, I suppose, because a lot of us have played games like from PlayStation 1 onwards, so like the F1 games and other things. Were there any other, in terms of, is there a particular game perhaps that's coming out in the near future that you think would be worth a shot?
I want to try the Horizon games. Have you ever played the Forza Horizon?
I've not an Xbox, but...
Yeah, it's on PC, if you're on PC now.
I see it's on PC.
So I'm excited to try that because it kind of takes me back to Need for Speed Underground 2 days, and I think that'll be fun. Yeah. It'll also be fun when you can have it on a rig. I've never done that before. But then probably the next Gran Turismo game I'm most excited for, whatever that ends up being. It's where I started it. It's loads of fun. It's the easiest way to get into racing, and it's the only platform I think now that you can sit down and join a race and there'll be good racing like immediately. So I think that's really cool.
No, it is. I think that for also, I think I have a lot of the old tracks back in GT7, so that should be quite good fun.
Yes,
it'll be interesting to see, and plus the new cars, more racing, and it's going to be. I mean, they've got such a huge scope of what they can do, so hopefully you're never going to please everybody, but I'm sure it will get to a point if they can please enough. I mean, I think it will probably do record sales because people have been in anticipation for it for so long.
Totally,
I always just remember doing the F1 version that they had, and like at Monaco, 78 laps, and you had to change your tires every 5 laps, which was a pain in the rear for having to come in all the time. But it was still good. Hopefully, they'll get a few more tracks in the new one. That would be quite good. But I'll quickly go and look at the questions here for you. Let's see. Somebody's put one of their favourite games was a game called Pole Position, and that's showing his age. That's from Rumar. That was an old one. That it was always the thing. I remember as well for some of the old F1 games. Have you ever played any of the F1 games?
I played F1 2019 at university. That was lots of fun on my PlayStation. I only ever played the career modes because I thought that was where the fun was. I really enjoyed the career modes on Formula One. I was given F1 2020 pre-release. I wrote a review about that actually. That was good fun. And then I haven't got 2021. I got so sucked into iRacing. I find that it could absorb so many hours that I don't tend to play with much at the moment. Especially like with racing with Basic Ollie and Kirith and whatever. Particularly with Basic Ollie, in the 24 hours, he's got such a good team that I need to put hours in the week to be on par. Like 10, 15, 20 hours of practice before a 24-hour race to be on pace. And so it hoovers up time.
Absolutely. Now, in terms of your channel, where would you like to see it grow, and what would you like to what's your kind of plans for the channel?
That's a really interesting question, Hugh. I really don't know. For me, the channel is, obviously I spend my entire day planning content and doing thumbnails and writing scripts and doing all this YouTube stuff, like looking at really nerdy analytics, all of that stuff all day, that I could do that on my channel, but I don't want to. And so that's kind of why I'm settling for, I'm not going to mess around with thumbnails too much. And I'm just going to stream when I feel like it and upload when I have a fun race. And so for me, it's about that I can share content, share it with everyone else, but for 10% more effort, rather than turning into something that I pump out, 3 videos a week and really push hard on it, because I don't think I would lose the fun side of it for that. So that's really what I want my channel to be, is something that's fun, that I enjoy doing, where I can share what I'm up to. And that's kind of what I want it to be. So you'll see the content is just what's come out of my brain. And I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, as we're nearly on, we're on 50 minutes there into the show, and I'll look at some of the closing questions. But from Pagan Ants, he says, what development do you hope will happen in sim racing?
What development? Proper wet models. Like people would argue, ACC fans would argue they've done it. I would disagree. Proper wet racing, with dynamic rain, with proper wet lines, with spray modeled correctly, all of that sort of stuff. Imagine you doing a 24-hour race and in the middle of the night it rains and you've got to adapt really quickly. That sort of stuff would be really cool. But for me, it's a great spot right now. And I would like to see the multi-class and the team endurance events come to something that isn't iRacing, because that's where the fun is for me, is sharing it with friends, being part of a team, spending the week talking about setups and playing with liveries and teaching each other racing lines and finding where you're quicker than someone else and sharing that. All of that sort of team aspect is where the fun is for me in sim racing. So I would like to see that to come to Gran Turismo Sport or Formula One or something like that. And I think that's where the enjoyment, really increases. So
and what's your next 24-hour charity race? You can plug as much as you like on this show.
I actually don't know, because we're in the middle of we're between seasons in iRacing. So I'll definitely do a Daytona, which is November. That's a while away. But other than that, I'd like to do a lot of the 6-hour and the 2.4-hour races, which are coming up. So I know there's 2.4 hours of Le Mans soon, and there's a couple of fun tracks like Hockenheim for 6 hours, which I think will be really fun. But I need to talk to Kirith and people about that and see what's going on.
We'll have to have a quick word with Kirith and Ollie, because it'd be great to have them back on the show as well. I know we had them at Christmas time with Rory, which was great fun, and also we had Ollie on before that when he was just only on about 2,000 subscribers at the time, and now his channel has rocketed off in the last year, which has always been great fun. But so I was going to say in closing, what kind of message would you like to say to the community that's been following you so far? What would you like to say to them?
What would I like to say to the community? I don't know. That's a really tough question, Hugh. That's a really tough one to end on.
Got you that one.
I would say it's been really. Discord is a great place to talk to people, and a lot of the sim racing guys like Kirith and like Basic Ollie and Jimmy to an extent, and a few of the others, Rory, have got really, really great communities that are willing to share and have fun and really join together, that I've never seen in a way like in sim racing. I've never experienced that in any other games or aside from sort of local clubs. I've never seen it like that. And so that's been really encouraging. And I would say keep doing that. It's why I'm quite active in a lot of those places. And I think if you're looking to get into sim racing or aren't enjoying it, I would say connect up with one of these communities, because that would change. It's definitely the way to do it, is surrounded by the people that enjoy what you do. Because I find with sim racing, I don't know many people in real life from around where I live that do this, but on the internet, there's everyone there. So.
No, it's fantastic. That's fantastic. Now, the dude at Pines has said, Hugh, I almost stumped him. That was the first Callum stuck for words. And I always said it's supposed to be an easy interview. We don't leave big gaps here in this show. But no, it's been fantastic fun. But so now, just to let everyone know who's watching just now, next week we've got the Key 25. That's right, Kieran is going to be on the show. And on the 23rd, we have Matt Foster. And on the 30th, we have Zavicic all the way from Slovenia. So that should be great fun. And on the 7th of October, we've got Dave Cam. And then after that, we'll have some more exciting guests.
What a lineup.
Yes, it's been a big lineup. And we're hoping to get Rory on again as well, and a few others, and hopefully Super GT. And I've been trying to get on to Jimmy. I've got through to his secretary, and they keep saying, yeah, I'll come back to me. But hopefully we'll get Jimmy on, because that would be great fun. I've never interviewed him before, but watched a lot of his shows, so it should be good. But we wish you all the best for your channel, and for your racing and sim racing. You're a lovely guy, and it's great to see your enthusiasm for sim racing, and you're in a unique position there with Driver 61 to get all that kind of key insight on how to be the best racing driver and sim racer, which is fantastic.
I'm doing my best to share it. So
no, it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. So please stay on the line just now. And but to everybody watching, thank you very much for your support tonight in the chat, and for watching or listening on the podcast. As I say, it'll be out in a few days' time as well. But you'll be watching the Car, Sim and Race Driver Show with our crazy motto. It is drive fast and try not to crash. And if you do, you might just win the race at the first corner. Take care, everyone, and we'll see you next time. Bye just now.